You know, let's take early stages, right? So early stage startups generally require a lot of talent and talent from different sources, different pool, right? So what happens is a lot of people are not ready-made, they don't have ready-made talent, right? So how can people actually transition from a different organization, or maybe if they are in different role, how can they transition to CS?
Cool. Thanks for asking that question, actually. So just for some context, I was previously working in operations vertical in a B2C company, which was Uber. And I transitioned to Shipsy, which is essentially a early stage SaaS startup in the logistics and operations domain, wherein I'm handling the customer experience, the entire customer success, and the entire customer officer piece that you may talk about, right? So, as fundamentally, on the face of it, it might appear that these two are quite drastically different roles, and they might require completely different skill sets. But fundamentally, what I've realized working at Shipsy here is that my previous experience have actually helped me scale up in customer success role, because fundamentally the skills that are needed are three things. One is your relationship management. Second, I believe, is being customer obsessed. And third is having a data-driven approach, right? And all of these three things I've actually picked either from my life or from my experience at Uber, right? So if I have to just give a quick example of being customer obsessed, at Uber we used to call it driver obsession. Drivers were our customers, right? And whatever we did, like for example, understanding the real pain points of the drivers, even we were trying to actually scale auto in one of the locations in Chennai, I remember. And the issue that we were facing was the app was in English, right? And the drivers over there would actually understand Tamil much better than English, right? That is something we didn't realize when we were launching cars, because English was pretty much okay with them. But for launching auto, that was a real challenge. Right, so understanding the customer pain point, and yeah, we went on and we actually launched an app in a vernacular language, right? So understanding that particular pain point is I think something very critical, and something that you want to do similarly as a role in customer success as well, right? So that is, I think, the first part of it. The second part of it, like I mentioned, the data-driven approach, which is there. So again, I think every experience at Uber, I mean, every decision making that we had at Uber was always based on the data, right? There was no meeting every meeting started with data, it ended with insights and actionables based on those data, right? So I think it's very critical, similarly, for a customer success person to actually keep on looking at that data. And sometimes it will help you actually break the perception that may not be the reality, right? For example, what I've often seen is your customer might come and say, hey, your product is useless. It's of no value to me, right? But it might be highly possible, or it might be possible that you're actually saving a lot of cost for the customers from your product, right? How do you show that ROI? How do you understand the value that your product is delivering? Until and unless you look at the data, until and unless you don't understand what the goals the customer has and what the product is trying to solve, it's very difficult to defend in any way. Similarly for support, right? You might hear pretty often customer complaining that, hey, your support sucks, right? It doesn't resolve. The resolution time is pretty high. It may be true, right? It may not be true. It may be true, but you again cannot make that hard and fast decision unless you look at what are those matrices of resolution, first response, and so on, right? And interestingly, it might be the case that either you end up changing the perception of the customer, or you end up changing the processes at your company, right? You go back and give that feedback loop back to your company, which helps to improve your product or people or processes or whatever is the case, right? And lastly, I spoke about relationship management specifically, right? So I think I personally believe that your work and life are very closely integrated. It cannot be that you are a different person in work or you are a different person in life. It cannot be the case, right? So personally, I've always valued and nurtured the relationships that I've had, and that kind of helps me understand and nurture the relationship with the customers as well. So I think that is one piece which probably we miss, but yeah, broadly the dots connect as long as we can see what are those skills and if we are built for those skills. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Let's move on to the more sort of mid-stage startups. So this question is for you, Raman. What are some common pitfalls for a CSM during customer success life cycle at a mid-stage organization?
So, what I personally have observed in such scenarios is that, in mid-stage startups, a lot of processes are being built and focused upon, but they have not yet reached completion, right? They are still in the middle frame. Due to which, what happens usually in such scenarios is that the customer success teams usually have to adhere to processes, but it is more of a manual thing, wherein they have to deal with a lot of Google Sheets, they have to fill in information there, back and forth, handle the customers, right? So bandwidth planning is like one of the major pitfalls that I've seen in such scenarios, and task prioritization, wherein everything is coming in a bucket without specific segmentation of what has to be done first. So I guess this is one of the major concerns that I have seen. And this can always be, taken care of by, adding automation in certain aspects, right? Wherein you are trying to build in tools, reduce the Google Sheets, prioritize on what kind of stuff has to be taken up. And when I mentioned about segmentation as well, it's not just related to customer, but also your tasks. That do I need to firstly attend this meeting? If I talk about the internal aspects, do I need to attend this meeting? Do I need to, focus 1 hour of my synergy filling up this sheet? And now when I talk about the customer scenario, is this customer really the need of the hour? Now when I say need of the hour, definitely all customers are important. But if you have segmented it well, that how much revenue is someone adding, what kind of industry are they from? Is it a way to tech touch customer? That is a lot of implementation heavy customer is there, which might come up as a result that there might be issues that they're facing. Or is it just a vanilla flow specific customer who just took the product as it is? So how do you kind of focus them? And then what kind of customer is in a specific life cycle? Are they in the onboarding phase? Are they in the adoption phase? Or are they in the last phase where you need to start talking about, say, renewals, upsells, right? And these things, like when you are able to segregate it well, that's where you're able to, manage the bandwidth. The pitfalls are taken backstage, right? And then the other thing is that you also are able to focus on customers well, tasks well, and you also ensure that at the end of the day, the customers are happy with you. So I guess these are certain things that I have personally seen and observed. And I guess automation is the key, and task prioritization and segmentation are the keys to kind of overcome these pitfalls in such scenarios.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, this question is for you, Varun. We have spoken about early stages, mid stages, right? Life cycle problems and all. One problem that comes more often is at more sort of a matured organization, your customer grows, right? Your customer base grows. So you also face challenges in the CS operations. So how do you scale CS operation when your business grows?
I think the multiple challenges come over there. When we speak about enterprise firms, they're not just focusing on enterprise customers or commercial customers. Basically, we are also focusing on long tail customers. When we speak about long tail, they are not just like 100, 200. We are speaking about like in thousands and that too across globe. Now, there's some leader who woke up in America and hey, we want to change the strategy today. We want to make sure that we give the more love to our long tail customer. Easier said, but then when it comes to execution, it's not easy. From that perspective, I think what I have seen in my past experience is we have to marry a couple of things together. No hard feelings about marrying a couple of things. It's just an example from that perspective. We have to bring in technology together with marketing. That's one. Second, we have to define the customer centricity. Now, it's a very, very easy word when any leader comes into the picture, say, hey, we are a customer-centric company. But what actually customer-centric company is all about, right? Technology, we can do X, Y, Z things, but then, hey, do you even have the data? My CS ops guys struggle day in, day out just to give us the right information about which customer is struggling with basic necessities. My sales guys are on behind them. Even the sales ops, customer ops, they're all struggling day in, day out. So we have to have a system in place which can actually collate everything, give us a unified view of what is happening, what's not. From the segmentation perspective, that's something which helps in customer centricity, is define which customer needs to have what kind of love from the company. Do we really need to spend time from the ops perspective on specific set? Because if it's an enterprise customer where the loading which you have just mentioned, there are 2 or 3 customers per CSM, they can easily do the extraction of the information. But when it comes to 300, 400 customers per CS, it's not possible. And the KPIs remain the same, whether you are managing 2 or whether managing 400 customers. So we have to bring technology, we have to bring automation into the picture, we have to make sure that we know which systems are in place. We have to give enablement to the CS team so that they can utilize those systems, and then most importantly, teach them how to read the reports. From the finance perspective, it's all about finance. When I go on the call with the customer, they're not worried about utilization and all. They're like, what is the ROI? Can I speak about this? And then when it comes to scale, they don't even wait for it. They're like, hey, nobody has reached out to us from so-and-so date. It's a renewal time. That is what we have achieved. And then you are in the soup because you don't have any data. So I think these things, if we can focus on, it helps a lot from the operation perspective.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. So next question is for you, Stuti. What happens at early stage companies is you focus on retention and then you focus on acquisition, right? These are 2 things that it's like on the seesaw. So how do you manage the trade-off between 2?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because it's a tricky problem to solve, especially at an early stage company, right? But in all honesty, bulk of our focus is on the customer acquisition to begin with, because you want to be relevant in the market, right? For an early stage company, to begin with, you don't have any customers, right? You want to at least acquire a certain set of customers, make your product relevant in the market, and then probably move towards focusing on the retention side of it. Now, I think the question is, when is that time to focus on retention, right? And I think it is primarily 2 things. One is how complex is your product. In our case, for example, it is a pretty complex product. You might take the case of Slack, right? Slack is pretty intuitive. Anybody can simply download, and it's a product-led growth that is there. But in case of Shipsy, being into operations, logistics domain of things, and because of the kind of nature of folks operating this platform, this actually comes out as a pretty complex product for those folks, right? So hand holding them becomes critical. So you would want to build your team definitely around it, at least some people dedicated towards that, so that your customer don't churn, right? And then the second part of it comes around the growth aspect, right? So essentially what we have realized, and what Ayan also mentioned, the financial aspect of it, right? So depends on a certain company I've seen may have some revenue targets which might be 80% from your existing customers, while 80% from your new customers, while 20 from your existing. While some may have this split as 60 and 40, right? So there's no one size fit all, but it depends on what kind of a revenue or what kind of a growth you can extract from your existing customer. Thereby you increase their lifetime value on the platform, increasing your finances profitability, and at the same time delivering value for them as well. Right.
And has it changed recently, because the market has not been doing well in last 1 or 2 years? I know a lot of companies who are changing the focus to retaining customers and doing upsells and all. Has something changed recently in your organization?
Yeah, we have actually rebranded customer success to customer growth, right? Where we are looking at success not just from a point of retention or upsell, but that actually being a growth engine for the company. So traditionally, growth has always been associated with sales and marketing. And because I have a growth tagline in my LinkedIn profile, I generally get all marketing inbounds as well, right? But there is a major chunk of growth which the customer success function can drive. And to bring them to that mindset, we have actually changed this entire strategy from success to growth. And like if I have to just give an example, one of our automotive and manufacturing clients, right? It was doing okay. They were pretty much okay. NPS was fine. They were growing at a good 2 to 3% month on month, right? When we saw the potential of the customer. It's a huge automotive manufacturing giant in the country. We saw the potential. We put a dedicated resource. And you wouldn't believe, within a matter of 1 month, we scaled the revenue to 2x. And we ended up saving the cost of the customer. They were saving close to about 1 to 2 lakhs per day from our platform. They started saving 15 to 20 lakhs per day, right? And the customer is still growing. It's growing 2x month on month. And yeah, I mean, that is the kind of focus, because you have that growth mindset in terms of...
That's impressive, Stuti.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that is where we would want to focus all our energies.
Great. Great. I think it's really important to know where to put your focus on, and that brings me on to my next question, and this is for you, Raman. So what happens is, if you have to put your energy in right form, right, you want to know, you have to segment your customers. Otherwise, what happens is, as Stuti mentioned, no one size fits for all, right? So how do you segment your customers so that your customers get more value and according to the product fit and all? How do you manage that?
So at Haptik, what we are doing is that the very first important thing that we do is pick up the industry, because our solution is definitely, catering to multiple industries. So the first thing that we pick up is the industry and understand, is it telecom, healthcare, even e-commerce. After that, we tend to look at the use cases that they have applied for. Say, for example, if there are similar use cases that more or 3 or 4 customers have asked for, we have taken our learnings from implementing that use case at the first go. So we now know that how much time is it going to take, and how much, and what kind of pitfalls can we look at. So we are already prepared for that. So this kind of really helps us beforehand while getting into, taking care of implementing a solution for the implementation team in conjunction with the CS. The second thing that we look at is, tech touch, or tech heavy, tech touch, or needs a lot of manual intervention. And that is basically for the customers that would be bifurcated into SMB, mid-market, as well as enterprise. So enterprise, as Anne had mentioned, that there would be a lot of consultation that would be required. They would need strategic meetings from our side, which means that there would be more time allocation from the CS side. Then comes the mid-market, which is basically the talk of the town, wherein we need to see that how fast or swiftly we can give a solution to them. And in order to give them a solution, how well are we aware of the problem, right? And then the SMBs, which can definitely go for a tech touch. But when we say SMBs, it always comes with a caveat that the customer that you have categorized as an SMB, is it basis the revenue that they are giving to the company? It might be an scenario wherein the company is pretty big, but the ticket size is really small, which makes them an eligible candidate to become an enterprise or a mid-market in the near future. So that is something that we need to really look into while we are catering these customers. Then the last thing that we look at from a segmentation perspective is how easily can we capture a CSQL or a CSQA, that's customer success qualified lead, or a customer success qualified advocacy. That is their willingness to be a part of your webinars, their willingness to be a part of your talk shows, and talk about the product and give you references as well. What kind of these customers are, and how can you bifurcate them to give them that essential experience so that they can stand up for you and become your own marketeers at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you are also saving cost from that perspective, right? And then the customer age or the life cycle, basically, that how old the customer has been associated with your own organization. Have they completed 1 year? If that was the case, what kind of ROI have they achieved by using your own solution? How much you were close aligned with giving them that solution and the value proposition, right? And that's how you can use those learnings again, as I mentioned earlier, to kind of share it with your other customers as well. That's kind of a win-win when you are doing it in the form of customer segmentation. And one thing that we critically do, or kind of I personally achieve look at is what kind of person are you in touch with? When I say kind of a person, is he kind of an industry leader whose words are really having a lot of weight in the industry when they say something, or with whom you can do a partnership in terms of, as I mentioned, webinar. So how that person has grown branches in the industry that you are working with. I guess these essential parts help us segment the customers, as well as ensure that we are getting while giving them value, we are getting the ROI from those customers, not just monetary, but from a marketing perspective and a product feedback perspective. So these are some items that we look at while we are segmenting our customers.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Raman. Varun, next question is for you. We discussed about scaling the CS operations and all, but these days everyone is speaking about ChatGPT and AI. So how do you think we can bring in AI in scaling the CS operations, or CS as a whole, maybe?
I think that's a good question, and it's not just, I mean, glad that you asked about CS. I think I've been into a lot of customer meetings, irrespective of whether they know about AI, ML or not, they want like, everything has to be like automated. कुछ तो करना है. तुम्हारे प्रोडक्ट में है या नहीं है? है. कहाँ पे? मैं कहाँ बताऊँ कहाँ पे है? So neither they know nor we know. So that's a different story altogether. But keeping in,
I think it's there on the landing pages at least.
True. I mean, we have learned those words, like how to manipulate them from that perspective. But from the CS operation perspective, the way we can bring AI ML is multifaceted. We need to, I mean, my fellow folks have already covered in terms of segmentation, in terms of health, customer health, in terms of predictive analysis, in terms of engagement, in terms of customer relationship. So if we can bring those automative or predictive analysis into our system, that can actually help us from the scale perspective, I have to quote, can help us to understand which customer over the period of 6 months or 3 months, is it risk or not? Do we see a certain trend lines? Do we see this behavioral trend around it or not? NPL is one thing which is part of it. So if those data points are accessible to us or to the CS, we can automate it. Again, AI, ML thing comes into the picture. You can create the sequences. We can send the emails based on those behavioral parameters saying that, this is happening. We can anticipate a upsell or cross-sell, or maybe in terms of downsell, hey, let's bring the, push the panic button or not. So we can bring those things into the picture. How that helps as a company. So for, the companies that I have worked with, including Adobe, Zendesk, they have started focusing on the predictive analysis and predictive risk identification since like 2017 onwards. And they have been successful enough. And when I was able to scale the team, from the CS perspective, what has been helpful is the choosing the right product. Now, I'm not naming any specific CS product because, guys will kill me over here. But then, there are plenty of good products which can actually help you to get those insights day in, day out. Your CS ops can always feed that data into it. Your QBRs are far, far better with our customers. And from the success scale perspective, I was able to actually touch almost 3,000 to 4,000 customers within my zone through these automated processes. What helps me a lot is, so from the number perspective, I have to tell you, in the companies that I have worked, almost 90% of your customer account, not the ARR, are from the long tail or the mid-sized customers. Mm-hmm. Your revenue might be less, but there's a huge opportunity that you can grow. And except the salespeople, nobody is touching it. So if you have these parameters, if you have these insights in place, I have personally seen them becoming the enterprise customer. They are spending millions with us. Now, it's all about time, patience. You need to spend the right time into it. You need to have a right mindset within the company. Fortunately, the companies that I've worked with, they are bringing the right tools, right mindsets into the picture. We have been able to accelerate it, and we have seen value out of it. So I would say that if you are not into it, choose the right product which can help you with those insights. There are good one, which is already there. One, ma'am is sitting with us. But there are tools which you can already explore about it.
Got it. Okay. I think, Varun, you also mentioned something about CSQL, and Raman also mentioned about it. So I would like to open this floor to all of you about CSQLs, if you have done something about CSQL, because I think it's getting very popular these days, and there is not much information around it. So just in case if you want to share something about it.
Can I go first? Yeah, all right. So CSQL is not new. We have been known, this particular terminology has been known as account managers earlier. Now, this evolved word as a CSAM, now CSQL. It's not just new, like since post-COVID, like all the companies have seen growth, but now they have focused on business growth. They really need leads. They really need business. And your KPIs are pretty much aligned into it. In fact, all the companies, which I have worked, and I'm doing some consultancy for others, none of the CS, or basically they have divided the CS into two parts. Either you are a tech support, you are supporting the product, or you are bringing the revenue. And they have hardcore KPIs around it. It's not just upsell, cross-sell, randomly will give you spiffs or not. You bring the numbers into the picture, you carry the quota around it. That creates a lot of friction with the sales folks, of course, because central unit, that intelligence perspective, you bring that insight into it. But then, if you are not bringing those leads, you cannot share the table with your C leaders, C executives in the system. And if you can't sit across them, you cannot ask help For that, you need business, and business means you need to bring new leads, new business. And how we can do it, again, there are multiple factors, health scorecards, you can see the predictive analysis, behavior scene, that, we can see that particular resource, this is something which we took help from the support team. So what happened is, we have asked them to analyze one of our customers, and what they came back is, this particular customer is focusing on this feature only. Lot of tickets coming in, but they are only focusing on this. Now we know that there's an opportunity for us to either grow that. So we went back to them saying that, hey, there are a lot of things we can do for you. We can give you more licenses. Forget about licenses. Start with the enablement as well. We can give them resources as well. So that helped us to bring more revenue to the business. And once we are able to bring it, I think what change we have seen in the system is we have stopped receiving those questions, tum karte kya ho? Like we can go back to saying them, hum bhi wahi karte hain jo tum karte ho. Right?
I think the numbers change a lot of things.
Absolutely. So it's changed entire perception. You see yourself evolved into the system. The value that you are delivering through your customer success perspective, now you are doing a value selling. It's just putting the right things into the picture. And then, of course, you have been bringing the revenue before. You are just not either comped or you are just not given the opportunity to call it yours.
Correct. Yeah. What do you have to share about it, Stuti?
Honestly, CSQL is something I'm hearing for the first time, right? Because again, we haven't reached that maturity to have qualified leads from a CS angle, but I can correlate it with the growth motion that we have set out, right? Essentially, we do have vertical carved within growth, where the focus is on the farming side of things, where you are actually focusing on nurturing the existing clients, figuring out what are the new features or new solutions which can actually help the client grow. And then, like Raman also mentioned, like Varun also mentioned, basically getting a seat at the table where you are making a point because you're contributing to the top line revenue, right? So I think that's what we are still building that muscle, but I think probably Raman and Varun would be the right person to take it up more formally. Yeah.
Right. So I guess my take on CSQL is that it all boils down on value, right? What value addition are we doing for the customer? And if they look at or see the value that has been given, I guess then they themselves will bring more customers. And I can give a small example as well, that one of our customers in telecom only, they took our solution. We are a conversation AI platform that helps build conversations so that you can answer your D2C customers at the end of the day at any point of the time. So they said that, we have multiple platforms, like we have support, we have IVR, and your product is doing good. You are processing around millions of conversations, but how does that fit into the ecosystem wherein we can go to the management and say that we want to expand them and deeply integrate this into our other use cases or departments? I guess that's where we told them that we have I guess data became a very important point here, that the day we were implemented as a solution, from that day till the end of 1 year, we could see that there was around 30% drop in the conversations or the queries that were going to their IVRs or support agents, due to which they were saving a lot of cost because they were automatically being processed by our conversation channel itself. So that in itself became a big testimony that yes, this solution is definitely saving a money, and it's not necessary to have multiple platforms in place to cater to only one solution of ensuring you are there for the customer to answer the queries. And that became the star point due to which they not only, took this to their other departments, but they also brought in more customers in their own, groups wherein they were talking about this, and due to which we started receiving leads, and we were able to tell the sales, as we mentioned that, we have got this much revenue on the table. But I guess the game changer was when you're able to show them the value that your product has given in terms of ROI. I guess that becomes a big game changer to get CSQLs. And not only CSQLs, I guess CSQA, that's Customer Success Qualified Advocacy, wherein your own customer becomes your own marketeer. Right? That becomes a change when they are totally bought in with your solution and they have seen the value that you have brought on the table.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, with that, I would like to open the stage for the questions from the audience. Guys, any question? Please raise your hands. Yes.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Siddhant. I lead the customer success at Tanla Platforms right now. And since Raman, you were speaking more about, and since we similar to the same background as well, so you were talking more about the Google Sheet and analyzing the data points. So my questions to you, so like what parameters do you consider for success metrics for a customer's productivity or like service standpoint when their product is being deployed or the service has been implemented?
I guess for us, what we look at is, time to value for the customer success manager, that how much was he able to firstly break down the problem of the customer and then put time to it. You can't do it in one go, right? So while I was talking about, filling up a lot of sheets, it was in context to, filling up customer information, sharing the problems, putting out all the information related to the customer. But when we look at the hardcore KPI, when I'm looking at their success, I'm simply looking at the value and the time to value that they have taken. That if there was a problem at hand that was told to them, what kind of solution was given from my CSM side and what kind of help did he get from others, but ensured that the solution was given or provided to the customer. But while the solution was also given, the time to value was taken care of, what were the other innovative things that were taken into account? Because you can't just say that, hey, the solution is given, the job is done, right? You have to focus on what next is there. You have to predict that what can come as a new problem. And that's where the CSM, my CSM would come into picture and tell them that if I also take an example of my own conversation platform, right? We would have, taken down multiple scenarios from our customer, predicted that, okay, these kind of questions can come from your end customer. So the time to value would be to building that out and ensuring that the bot is responding 100% to those queries. That's one kind of a success metric that we look at. But then looking at the industry in which the customer is working on, what kind of additional questions that an end customer can ask is the problem of my CSM. And how proactively is he telling it to the customer after giving the solution is something that we look at from a success point, and ensuring that when that is delivered, then again on the lookout to kind of, putting that revenue part on it, that, that is coming as an upsell. Because now you're giving additional solutions to him. So now you are also getting additional revenue. So that's how we kind of bifurcate and, kind of measure the customer success manager in my org.
Thank you, Raman. That was insightful indeed.
Hi, my name is Sukirti, and I wanted to ask Stuti that you mentioned about the data-driven approach. So what are the key metrics that you track before and after every conversation with the client, or maybe on a quarterly basis? That would be helpful. Thank you.
So when it comes to review part of it, right, you would want to very clearly know what is the ROI the client is getting out of your product. Right? It could be in terms of revenue increase, or it could be in terms of the cost saving, or maybe both, right? So that is one part which you would want to track in terms of the entire business value being delivered from your product. Other than that, it would also be a lot of other matrices, like in terms of number one, engagement, what kind of product interactions your customer has with the product, what is the usage metric like, what is the outcome like, if they are, if they are supposed to be going from feature A to feature B, are they actually doing that? So you can measure these things, right? Then I would say the experience part of it, which is essentially how is their interaction with the support team, right? What kind of, how much time is it taking to resolve those tickets, whether it is a support ticket or whether it's a new requirement ticket for that matter, right? And then again, it would be your CSAT, NPS, right, which overall indicates the health of the customer. And yeah, I think broadly these are the metrics that you would want to track. Other than that, the hygiene checks you have, the reviews that the customer is giving on other platforms, the NPS scores. So these are hygiene checks, right? If you tick all the other boxes, I think this naturally would fall in line. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have one question. There are two type of features. That one which CSMs are definitely incentivized because your account is expanding. There's a monetary benefit for that. Okay. Then there are other time the core of the product. A lot of the time, the core of the product, there's no direct incentivization for adoption. So how do you ensure that those features are also adopted? That those are like the minimum features which make the product valuable to your customers. For you. Yeah.
For me?
Okay. Yeah.
bit of, if you can just elaborate in terms of like, do you want, is your question is around like, how do we incentivize CSM from the product?
How do we ensure that the features which are, there's no direct incentive, right? Let's say you have acquired a new account, there are a bunch of 10 features that are already there in your product. The new features, if they onboard that or they land and expand the account, they are incentivized. But there are a bunch of other features, there's no direct incentive as such. So how do you drive adoption for those as well?
Fair enough. Yeah. So I think I'll take you back to the, the beginning of this session, when we started and our friend started with the discovery part. That's where, you need to go back to the drawing board saying that, hey, when we have onboarded the customer, we understood that these are the 4 or 5 things they wanted to achieve, and we mapped it back to our product saying that, we can deliver this. Now we know at the back end there are 10 other things which we can do, but at the mindset we also need to be sure about are they really useful for this customer or not? Because there are times when what I have seen is people are asking for the feature which are not really valuable for them. It doesn't make sense for you to go back saying that, hey, you just need to start using this and that. But keep that aside also. Let's say, they are useful, these features are useful. For instance, analytic tools, from the analytic perspective, we know that there are multiple reports, they can be useful for this customer and they're not using it. So what we can do is we can try to showcase them over the period of time. Hey, while you're doing it, what we have seen in our experience is other industry player within the industry, other players are also using it and they're getting value out of it. That's one way of doing it. Second is showing them, some snippets around, how they can actually get more value out of these extra reports. Maybe that's relevant to that particular person itself. He wanted to grow in his company, and I have seen that, people came to me saying that, how can you help me to promote in my company? And I'm like, really? He's like, yes. And then I try to find out like what his KPIs are. He's like, I need to show an awesome dashboard which can actually help my management to see that I'm able to deliver something new. And he's like, there are 3 other things which we are doing. And you have not been able to use it. Can we just help you to try and drive it? And, we build this engagement there. Again, the point is you need to discover, you need to speak again and again with these folks, try to find out, can we identify more use cases out of it? It can be within the same department or the BU which you are targeting, or maybe the different BUs within the industry, within that company as well. For instance, HR use case. You're talking to, some tech team, then HR can be useful, and those other features can be useful. So you need to speak with them more and more oftenly. You need to identify right context within that company. You cannot just continue to speak with one person or same person again and again. You need to go up to the ladder, penetrate into the accounts by means of connecting with the more few folks and call them into the different give them some action items around how that's fine, how they can they can get value out of it. So it's all about discovery, it's all about finding and asking the right questions with the customers, and then be open. There are times when somebody joined new and he or she doesn't even know what features are they already have in the product. So spend some time in learning about the product and what that product can solve. Again, do not focus on the features. That's not a game winner. If you go into the feature war, my friend is already sitting here. When we met each other, like we are born enemies. Like we are not born enemies. We know where we need to fight. But then feature will not win that. It's all about solution that you are offering. Are you able to solve any specific problem or not? So if you can find that out, I think it's a winner.
Thanks for that.
Hi, my name is Vishnu and I lead CS and Zyme. My question, Varun, to you is, you mentioned that, a lot of CS team members struggle to understand client pain and surface it to the senior level, right? And this problem sort of becomes enormous when there are 200, 300 clients that they are managing and use tech to solve it. What is the right time or trigger to look out for that tech? Number one. And second is, what are the parameters that we should keep in mind to evaluate such a tech?
Okay. I'll divide this into 2 parts. About timing, it's pretty loud for me right now. I think about timing, time has already gone. It's already gone. Like, companies are suffering, they're minting money, like they're losing money day in, day out. So they need, there is a need of getting in touch with the long tail customer. And when I say long tail customer, anything below like certain threshold or certain ARR bands. So that time is gone. We are already late. Majority of the companies are already late into that picture. So that means we have to expedite. We have to really understand how things needs to be moved. And I've seen CSM struggling into that simply because the strategy, the mindset of the management, and I'm not pinpointing any management, it's changing. They're trying to cope up with the market challenges. Their macroeconomics came in and they wanted to make sure that every single customer, what they have, they can retain it, they can mint that customer for more revenue. So the situation is already there. Like, we are into that situation. Now, what parameters we can bring in? Now, it's not easy to just put tech around. This is a change management. The moment you say, we are bringing change, everybody goes haywire. Like, they want to bring the change, but nobody wants to own it. And defining the accountability is the biggest challenge because it needs investment. When I go to my management saying that, can I have a team from the IT, who can help us to put together certain collaterals or certain systems for our system, it itself take a month or two just to convince them for it. So from the timing perspective, like, it's already running now. Parameters. Let's say you have right system into the picture. You really wanted to, start using it. So how it can help? First, you need to see what customer set you are going to target. Is it based on the renewal date? Is it based on the challenges they are facing? Is it focused on the growth? If not, then, do we need to see, are we focusing on just retention of that customer, giving them a touch point, or are we actually trying to, to upsell, cross-sell, or trying to get into that customer more detail? Third is you need to identify how you're going to see the incoming of those customers. Remember, once he has 300 customers, imagine, unlikely though, imagine 300 customers respond back to you in a single day, or even 50. The next thing you will do is you'll go to your manager saying that mail se nahi ho raha. So we need to figure that out. We need to make sure that we have a right check into this place, saying that if something comes in, is it related to support queries? Is it related to, growth queries? So we need to define the parameter into it. And then KPIs around it. KPIs in terms of, are we achieving the ROI? Are we making sure that, systems in place are up and running? Have we been able to touch these customers in, day out? Have we defined the right touch points for them? So once we define those parameters, I think that gives you a start, which you can utilize and evolve over the period of time and help you to achieve whatever the goals you are trying to achieve there. Hope that helps. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Ruchi and I head the implementation team at TechPacker, which is a fashion tech SaaS platform. So my question is to Stuti. I do agree that you need to be data oriented while you're taking any decision as a major skill for CS. But I do believe, like that's my belief, that you have to be equally empathetic, to be problem solving. And when this happens, I think in an agile setup, in an early age startup, what happens is that a CS is generally in that tough spot of being intuitive and being data-oriented. Why? Because, you don't have that much time of going into that loop, studying the data, getting the feedback, and then making a decision. On the other hand, you're sure that, you know that because you understand the customer, since you're being empathetic, you're thinking from their point of view. So my point is that, like, what's your advice or what's your mantra for that one part that, how to get off that juggle of being intuitive and being data-driven. And the third, and which is, I think, the most important thing is you have to be quick at decision-making in startups. So what's your suggestion for those kind of tough spots that we generally face throughout the execution phase?
Oh, that's a great question, right? Now, I also mentioned about being customer-obsessed and that relationship angle of it, right? So while data will help you proactively solve for issues rather than reactively manage it when things are burning, that is where that comes in. Plus, also understanding what is the perception versus what is the ground reality. That is where data helps you, right? But yeah, like you also mentioned, being empathetic. That is where the customer obsession, that is where when you start managing the relationship, the patience part, being tolerant part, being empathetic part comes into picture, right? You may have an intuition, definitely. I mean, most of the times, sometimes even I make decisions basis my gut feeling, right? So more often than not, you will actually find out that somehow this gut feeling of yours is in some way related, correlated to some data point which you are trying to prove, right? So that having that foresight is, I think, I mean, that is where data approach helps, and then balancing it out with your intuition. But you cannot go all out with just intuition that, hey, I believe or I think that this is what needs to be done. I mean, okay, but how do you prove, even if you think this needs to be done, this is delivering the outcome that you expected? How do you prove that, right? So to some extent, you need to have that balance as well, right? So yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that, the best would be to, like, how to just simply to mind of how to relate the data with what you usually have, and then kind of convince yourself and also prove it that that's important. So, yeah.
You need to basically know, yeah.
Sometimes there's a spot where you know that it needs to be done, because otherwise, being a startup, you cannot afford to lose a customer many a time. So those times it's like so tough to, even say that, it's there, I say, no, and we need to do it. We have to do it. And this happens in startups especially. So that's why I think, I think it's a balance that we need definitely to figure out that what balance works for our organization or the product that we have. So I think that answers the question.
And just so you know, it doesn't only happens in startup. It's everywhere. Everywhere.
I think we can take one more question.
Yeah, one last question.
Yeah, it's on. Okay, great. So my name is Chandani, and I am working with Coursera right now as a customer success manager. I have two questions. So I know you said one question, but it's two. So one is for Raman, because you mentioned that automation is important. So my question is, how as a CSM can we save 30% of our time without asking our management for any budget? So if I go back to my management and say, oh, I want to automate this process and maybe this is a good product for us, I'll get a no because we are in a bad market. So how do I save 30%?
Because that's a good question, and I have been through that. I guess the solution to that, if budget is a constraint, is that you have to sit internally with the team and look out for those freebie solutions out there. What I personally did, and I'll give you an example, is that, and again, I'm sorry, ZapScale, but we were trying to, get a customer success dashboard in place, and our whole problem was that I was not able to have a singular view of all the customers, wherein it can essentially tell me that who is at risk, who is green, that is okay, and who is kind of orange, right? Now the first thing that we did was kind of firstly come up with the weights, the metrics that are very important to kind of build that customer success dashboard. The question comes that, okay, I have built it out. Now do I still focus on Google Sheets, or do I take internal help? That's where we were looking out, and we stumbled across Locker Studio. That was one product that came into picture. That was completely free, and there was some tech help that I got from my implementation folks who helped me align the data that could be pushed in from Google Sheets that was automatically being updated. From the backend, we use Kibana as well. So from there, it was being updated, and it was automatically coming in that particular product. And again, it was free of cost. And we were able to, show this to the management that, look, you were not giving us a budget. It took us a good month to build that out, but we did that free of cost. And when the management looked at it and they said, okay, fine, this is something. So it became a prototype or a pilot to convince them that this is the need of the hour. Now they have started to look out for solutions that and give us budget, wherein we can get, and that actually saved a lot of time. Now, I would not even say 30. It saved us around more than 40-50% of our time in taking, some data-driven decisions, in taking the right steps at the right time. Say, for example, if the customer is completely green, and my company wants to do a webinar, they are the gold mine. I'll reach out to them and talk to them and get certain people from their management to talk on those. If certain people are at risk, I would not wait for the renewal period to come into picture and then go and take a step. I would simply jump on it. So that's where we were taking essential steps at the right time. And at the end of the day, yes, it saved us 50%, but it also convinced my management to allocate a budget and a team to help us look out for solutions. And we will reach out to you shortly. But to look out for some solutions to, build out a customer success dashboard and automate it. So this is the way, you solution it out. And most of the things I would say might be agreed by all the CSMs that it's not all, set up for you on the table. You have to think about it. You have to pick up the right cards and show it to them. It's not about money. It's about solutioning. If they find value, management will listen to it. This is what happened for us, basically.
Thanks, that's actually very interesting. So, the other question, sorry, but because everybody has said today about ROI, right? And I really like what Varun said. Sometimes people come and say, I want to get promoted. So, the goals are set at an individual level, a department level, and a C-level level, right? So, when we think about making sure that we show ROI, we want to translate their goals with the data that we have. Another thing that everybody has mentioned today. Some of the data is not quantifiable, right? Then in those scenarios, how do we make sure that the data that cannot be quantified is still represented?
This is for whom?
I hear you. I am from Indian Learning, so I see.
Yeah.
So this is for whom? This is for Varun, Stuti.
This is for everyone. Like, you can answer it.
All right, sure, cool. So,
You can give it to
my take on this, definitely you're right that certain data are not quantifiable in nature, and still you have to kind of show the ROI on that. I guess in that case, there has to be a discussion happening with the customer and the internal teams to understand the priority of those and the value addition of those particular tangible pointers. How are they prioritized, or how are they important in the value delivery chain? That do they really take a P1, P2 or P3, right? And basis that, when you come at that percentage level of weighing them, that how important are they, that's where you can take a, a more informed decision that do we really go ahead and spend more time on these aspects, or do we firstly look into the quantifiable aspect, make a decision, and then look at these, intangible aspects and come at a conclusion. Like that would be my personal take on it, but Varun would want to hear from you.
I won't make it that complex. I mean, what I will do is, first I'll try to, so my understanding is, and the way I go about is, if somebody is coming to me saying that, I need to see this, and, how can you define the ROI if I don't have a data? Most likely I don't need to have a data for it, because I really don't want to present it. If I had the data, I would have presented it by now. Now, that being said, there are times which has happened, and, we have worked together, so it has happened in the past. What I did is I actually skipped him and asked his manager, like, do you really want to see the ROI around it? And he's like, no, I have no clue, and I don't even want to do it. So I think the point is we need to find out what actually the customer needs. There are times when we have seen customers just need the data for the heck of it. They really don't need it. It won't even help them in the industry. They just want it simply because, kuch to chahiye karne ke liye types. But then the point is, if you think that data is not quantifiable, if something is not there, go with your gut feeling. There is no way the other person can cross-check it unless or until you are documenting it. Right? So you need to be smart and, making sure that people always listen to it. Try to be on the call rather than the email. As long as it's on the call, you will be in the same, safe boat. But then if the person's really go into deep that I really need the data, then probe it. How can we help you to arrange this data? Tell us, where you are going to use it, where you are actually going to see this data, and which portion of my products you think this data will be useful, can come from. If it's a product enhancement for us, good. We can open the VOC, we can go into with the product team, say, hey, hey, we don't have it right now, but this is something which is coming, and we can get it validated with other customers as well. Hey, we have been hearing this from this customer. Do you think this data is useful? If it's yes, it's a good option and way to improve your own product. If not, then you can continue this chain. Ayan.
Yeah. So how we solved it, I'll try and simplify it. So this ROI conversation is most of the time an elephant in the room, right? And it pops up all of a sudden when we are not prepared. The best thing is to bring it at the forefront, right? When you sold the product, there was a business case and there was a ROI that was defined. Templatize it, make it a part of your governance. That's point number one. Point number two, governance is extremely important, what he said, right? Get the right person in the meeting. If you get the wrong person in the meeting, you will get all the wrong questions asked. So I think bring the ROI conversation to the forefront, templatize it, make it a part of your routine governance. In your governance, get the right person so that you are having the right conversation.
And never do the ROI with the FLM. Never do the ROI discussion with them. Unless until there's the executive committee member there, don't even bother. No matter how much time they ask, be very upfront with that.
Great, thanks a lot, guys. I think it was a great session. Thanks, Varun. Thanks, Stuti. Thanks. You can take your seats.